So once again, welcome back all of you. All of you are welcome on this very special channel by the Prabhat sir, and I am Ashay Purandare, the faculty of the history, and we are discussing so many exciting sessions as far as the Indian history for UPSC is concerned. And today also we are going to discuss one of the most important, in fact we can say the most important session as far as the Indian history is concerned. Most important because it is the most favorite from the aspirant point of view also, and also from the exam perspective it becomes the most asked topic or the most asked area year after year. So from both these perspectives, this section becomes the most important section to be mastered, to be cracked for achieving a success in UPSC civil services. And of course, while discussing this section of the Indian history and especially the modern history, in this session again we are going to focus on the dimensions, the scope, the approaches, the areas which actually make the modern Indian history interesting also, relevant also, as well as focus in a long term also. So to start a discussion, we have to keep in mind that as I discussed and as I mentioned that modern Indian history is the most important section or area as far as the UPSC civil service exam is concerned. So again, just like we discussed about the ancient and medieval art and culture, the modern history is also associated both in prelims and mains. Right? Modern history is also the part of both the prelims as well as main examination. And the weightage of the modern history is also the highest both from pre and mains perspective. Right? The weightage of the modern history is also highest from both the pre and mains perspective. And one more thing which makes modern history as the most significant section or module of the Indian history is that even though it covers only 190 years or roughly 200 years of Indian history, right? That too the most latest part of the history before independence, still the point is that it is this area or it is this phase or a period of the Indian history which brings it with the highest level of the complexity. Right? And whatever we are today in the 21st century as India, the contribution of the ancient and medieval history is always there, but still we can say it is predominantly because of the events, the phases and the circumstances which shape the modern history of India. And just like we discuss in a world history also, that world history basically had influenced Indian history and vice versa. Same applies here also. The modern Indian history itself influenced the events of the world history, and the Indian history itself was influenced by the events which were taking place outside India or as a part of the overall history of the world. And just like we discussed in a world history, the age of Renaissance which had ultimately brought the new ideas, new thought process, okay? The new aspirations in Europe and the people of European society. Okay? So these ideas, aspirations, okay, and these ambitions brought ultimately the Europeans to India. Okay? Because for fulfilling their ambitions and aspirations, India was going to be the most important place because of the richness of India in terms of its cultural richness, in terms of its richness of the resources, in terms of richness as far as the climate diversity, right? And the geography is concerned, in terms of its richness as far as the human resource was concerned. Everything was there in India. Right? But Indian society, Indian political system, Indian socio-cultural thought process of the time when the modern history starts, our processes were not in a position to understand what exactly the world was going through, what changes the world was witnessing, right? And how everything we have, still how we could not use it for our own benefits. And this is where the Europeans came, and they knew that what they can do with the resources of India, both human and natural resources, the climatic resources, the territorial resources, cultural resources, everything, economic resources. They knew how they can tap it. And this is where again the Indian history took a new turn, and this was a turn which was going to be very far reaching, long lasting, and having long term consequences, and such a consequence which we are still witnessing as a part of the legacy as far as the modern Indian history is concerned. And this is a perspective and this is a scope whereby the UPSC will like us as aspirants to go through the modern Indian history. UPSC will like us to understand the things, events and sequences or chronology that shape our modern Indian history, and in turn which shape the world history also. And how a small island of a Great Britain and a race of British people, they ultimately came and ruled India. Not only did they establish their empire, but they ran their whole empire of the world with the help of India. India was like a jewel in the crown of the British, as is the proverb always used to describe the position and the pivotal importance or a significance which India enjoyed. This is where we have to understand, and this is what the UPSC expects from us, that how the processes took place when the British came. What was the impact of that British rule? How India basically was shaped into different way, how it was brought from the feudal medieval way of life into the modern life due to British rule, and how ultimately the very exploitation and the exploitative nature of the British immediately sought a reaction from Indians to fight against the British, which was witnessed in the revolt of the 1857 also, and which was witnessed in the formation of Indian National Congress also. And this formation of the Indian National Congress, which gave the birth to the Indian national movement, which ultimately helped us to achieve the independence. So this whole process we have to study, because it is very, very important from the multi-dimensional perspective. It will cover the different dimensions, angles, different perspectives, the different lookouts, different angles, channels, the interrelations between them, interdependence of each and every aspect with each other, and how collectively that brought a challenge to the mighty British rule, and how we were able to gain our independence, and what were these gains as far as the independence was concerned, that we have to see. And what happened after independence, we already have discussed in a post-independence era. So from that perspective, we will discuss now the way UPSC has been asking the questions. So obviously we have to discuss again what exactly is a syllabus or a scope of the syllabus, from which areas the questions have been coming. So that will help us to understand the important topics, and then we have to discuss in those topics how we can study, what we can study, and what should be our approach. Okay? So I will again start from the very perspective of the Indian history, that is modern Indian history, from the UPSC point of view. So again, we will have first exactly what UPSC wants as a part of syllabus. And in the syllabus, we will see that UPSC has mentioned history of India and Indian national movement. So as we know that history of India includes ancient also. History of India will also include medieval. And history of India will also include modern. So here the phase of the modern history which has been mentioned as a part of history of India, that will cover the era of 1757 to 1857. That will cover the era of 1757 to 1857. And here the Indian national movement which has been mentioned there, so it will cover the era of 1857 to 1947. It will cover the era of 1857 to 1947. And UPSC has clearly mentioned Indian national movement as a separate topic or aspect. So this means a special importance is given as far as this Indian national movement is concerned. So what we have to keep in mind, just like modern Indian history is the most important topic or a module as far as the history of India as a whole is concerned in a UPSC. Similarly, within modern history also, the Indian national movement is the most important topic. That point we have to keep in mind. Okay? So this is very crucial to us. Now, when we consider the number of questions which are asked in a prelims, so this part of a modern Indian history, 1757 to 1857, or roughly East India Company rule. Roughly the East India Company rule. It will basically have 3 to 4 questions or 4 to 5 questions. Because we saw that there are total 15 to 20 questions on history in prelims. Out of that, 7 to 8 on ancient plus culture, and 2 to 3 on medieval plus culture. Okay, so remaining questions, 10 to 12 questions on modern. Remaining 10 to 12 questions will be on modern. So out of this total 10 to 12 questions on the modern, we can easily see that 3 to 4 questions or sometimes 4 to 5 questions will be asked on this topic, the 1757 to 1857, as far as the first phase of the modern Indian history is concerned, when British were consolidating their empire, and ultimately by 1856 they had achieved the political unification as far as India was concerned. And this whole era is known as the era of East India Company, or the rule of East India Company. And then we have second aspect, that is 1857 to 1947. So 6 to 7 questions, 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 questions will be asked only on Indian national movement. So that's why just I told you that out of the whole syllabus as far as history is concerned, both for pre and mains, modern is most important, and within modern, Indian national movement is the most important. But that doesn't mean that this phase of the Indian history, that is modern Indian history, is less significant. It is also as significant as the phase which we find after the formation of Congress and 1857 revolt. Okay, because of the sequences and the events and the situations and circumstances which shape this whole phase, because of that only this phase came as a response to the earlier events which happened. So that's why the sequence is very, very important. the interconnection and the interlinking is very, very important. So that should be there for our clear understanding. Okay. Then now we will discuss from 1757 to 1857. Okay. What kind of questions we can expect as far as the Indian history is concerned. Okay. So we will see. So for these pages, we will see the topics where the questions will be asked. First will be establishment of British rule. Okay. First will be establishment of the British rule. So here we will have Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, okay. Then Anglo-French War, Anglo-Dutch War, Anglo-Maratha, and Anglo-Mysore War. Okay. These are the important topics. But as I have mentioned, UPSC is not interested in a battle per se. UPSC is not interested in political history per se. But the point is that those battles which change the very course of Indian history, UPSC definitely will like to go into that. But again, if the UPSC is going into these battles, it doesn't mean it is going to ask you the events of the battle. That which side had how much army, whether there was artillery or not, who was commanding the army, okay, how the events took place, who killed whom. No, that is not the concern of the UPSC. Okay. In all this range of topics, what we will see, either the causes or a background, okay, and consequences or significance. Okay. Either the causes or factors for these battles and consequences or significance as far as these battles are concerned. Okay. This is where the UPSC is interested, and UPSC is also interested linkage of these events with events of world history. Okay. So when these battles and all the things were taking place in India, so what were the events which were taking place simultaneously in a world historical context? That is important. So easily we can see when this Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar and so on was taking place in India, at the same time in England, Industrial Revolution was taking place. Just along with Anglo-Maratha War and Anglo-Mysore War, the French Revolution and American War of Independence was taking place. So obviously the events which were there, the events which were happening there, they had their own indirect influence in India, and whatever was happening in India had a direct influence on these events, or the events which were shaping the France, America and so on, or the Europe as a whole. And this is where the UPSC will try to probe you. This is where UPSC will expect that you should study, and then you should basically establish this connectivity and linkages and have the multi-perspective and multi-dimensional view. Okay, so this is a very crucial aspect. Then acts and constitutional development. Okay. During East India Company rule. Okay. Acts and constitutional developments during East India Company rule. This is also very significant as far as the 1757 to 1857 phase is concerned. Right? Because these acts and constitutional development ultimately help us to have our own constitution after independence. Right? So there is a whole legacy as far as these acts and constitutional development is concerned. Right? Of course, all these acts and constitutional developments, they were not intended to bring any kind of democracy in India. Right? They were intended to fulfill the British interest. But still, whatever may be the case and cause, ultimately a modern system of the administration and modern political institutions were introduced by the British in India. Even though they were of help for them, even though they were established for their own interest, right? Still India was brought from the feudal administrative system, feudal political system to the modern system, and this is where the significance is also important. Transition feudal into modern political system. That was made possible only because of the so-called acts and constitutional developments. And especially from prelims perspective, we have to study features also. Right? We have to study features, both pre and mains. Both pre and mains, the features will be asked. Right? And then you will be asked to analyze or critically analyze also. Analyze or examine. Right? Analyze or examine or critically analyze. Or examine these acts and constitutional developments. So this part also we have to keep in mind as far as the phase of 1757 to 1857 is concerned. And that's why this is a very multi-dimensional area, very interesting area also, and having a kind of linkages, the interlinking and the scopes which go in a different dimensions. So that point we have to keep in mind. Then next aspect on which the questions will be asked, land revenue policies of British. Okay, so dual system, contract farming, permanent settlement, okay, Rayatwari settlement, Mahalwari settlement, okay, Talukdari settlement, all these land revenue policies. Okay. So again, what will be asked? Features. Okay. Significance. Okay. Then disadvantages. Long-term consequences. All these things will be asked as a part of these land revenue policies. So again, this is a very multi-dimensional area. It touches a very minute perspective, from which the policies took place, and then it tries to establish its own significance, the consequences, positives, negatives, and so on. So because of that, it will also become a very crucial area of preparation. So UPSC has asked the questions, it will continue to ask the questions. So that point also is very, very important for us. Okay. Then after this, the next aspect on which the questions will be asked. Overall consequences of British rule in India. Okay, overall consequences of British rule in India. Okay. Economic policies and their consequences. Okay. Governor Generals and their achievements. Governor Generals and their achievements. On these are also the aspects on which the questions will be asked. These are also the aspects on which the questions will be asked as far as the UPSC is concerned. These aspects were also shaping the India in one way or other, in a very comprehensive and holistic way. India was being transformed. India was basically, now as I told you, that it had become the prime colony as far as the British were concerned. So how that prime colony was being used by the British for their own interest, not only within India but with respect to other countries also. How India was fulfilling their global aspirations and ambitions. How India was helping them to not only expand their empire but also to maintain their empire. These aspects also will be very clear to us once we study all these angles. And these angles, as I mentioned, they are simple yet complex yet simple. So once we focus on these angles very critically and with a very clarity, then we will get the idea how the things were happening. Everything will be unfolded before us, and that's why we have to keep in mind, especially for modern India. Modern India itself, you will see, despite having so many facts, focus is not on facts, just like any other aspect of Indian history, but particularly in modern history, the critical analysis of the fact, the interlinking of that fact, interconnectivity of the fact, interdependence of that fact, and how that fact was influencing the other events, that becomes of a crucial importance. So all the topics which I have mentioned in this 1757 to 1857 phase, they are very, very important to us, both in pre and mains, despite the fact that we are going to witness only 3 or 4 questions in prelims, and in the mains also we are going to witness 15 to 20 marks questions. But still all these topics are very, very crucial to us, because unless and until we study all the perspectives, dimensions, scope and the linkages of the topics which I have mentioned, we will not able to link them and connect them and carry on them with the future events which were going to shape India. So that point has to be there. And always, as I have mentioned, this whole phase has to be linked with the world history, the events which were taking place in the world historical arena. The whole world was being shaped and transformed into the modern world. It is not the case that that India was the only country which was feudal. No. Most of the countries of the Europe and even the whole America, America was like a virgin land, but especially the Europe also, it was feudal. But Europe was able to bring itself out of that feudality and transform itself into a modern continent. And one by one, each and every country of this continent was transforming itself into a modern country due to the events which were taking place in Europe itself and within the respective country also. And same applies to India. But the point was that India was not able to bring a internal transformation. India was not able to make itself a modern country from a feudal country. It was only the British intervention. Right? It was only the British intervention which ultimately brought India out of that phase of feudalism and transformed it into modern economy, modern society, modern political system and modern cultural traits by keeping intact India's own cultural legacy, civilizational legacy. Okay? So that's why this phase is very, very, very crucial. So now I am sure that you are very clear about what we have to study and what UPSC expects. Now we can go to the main phase, 1857 to 1947. So now we will see what happens and what is expected. So now we will see Indian national movement. (1857 to 1947). So this phase starts from one of the most important events of the world history. Not only Indian history, one of the most important events of world history also, Indian as well as world history. It is 1857 Revolt. Okay? That is 1857 Revolt. This single event has a kind of significance and importance, which all other events like French Revolution, American Revolution or the events of the European history collectively cannot have. Because this single event, and this event was like a long lasting, even though actually it took place in a short period of time. But in terms of significance and consequences, it was going to be a long lasting one. Right? And this single event was almost about to end the rule of a mightiest empire of the world. Right? And this event was shaped, and this event took place with the participation of the people of India and the leaders who were representing them, that too from different sections of the society. But the point was that all the Indians who were fighting against the mighty British power, they were fighting with their own orthodox way, without modern development, without modern weapons, without modern military strategies, thinkings, thought processes and so on. And nothing was there. But still almost they had overthrown the British Empire and the British power from India. And that empire and power, which was the most powerful empire of the world, it had shook the very foundations of British rule. The whole world had taken a note that how the country which is so backward is able to take on the most advanced country of the world. British themselves were terrified, not because the country like India had taken upon them, but the consequence of this event would have shaken their empire. It would have attracted other enemies of the British Empire back in Europe and America. who could have overcome and who could have overpowered the British. They could have threatened and snatched the position of the Britain as the number one power of the world. So that was the kind of fear which had struck in the minds of British. That's why the 1857 revolt is one of the most significant events, not only in Indian history but also in a world history. And from the very perspective, we have to see the things. So we have to see the causes or background. We have to see the causes or background. We have to see nature and characteristic. Okay. We have to see the nature and characteristics as far as the revolt is concerned. We have to see the causes for defeat. We have to see the causes for defeat. Okay. And then we have to see the consequences. Okay. This point is very, very crucial. And one of these consequences as far as the revolt of 1857 was end of East India Company. End of East India Company rule. That was one of the most significant consequences within India or within the administrative changes which were taking place. And then you will see this phase will be governed by British Parliament. Okay. This phase will be governed by British Parliament and intervention. British administration from London. The intervention of the British administration from London, British Parliament and the British administration from London. They were going to monitor now, they were going to regulate now the whole Indian administration. Whole India was now made subordinate as far as the English government system was concerned, English parliamentary democracy was concerned. And accordingly, for the next 90 years, they were about to rule India. So this point has to be very crucial to us. Okay. And then we have to see changes in administrative policy. Okay. Then we have to see educational development. Okay. Princely state relations. Okay. Now we will have to focus on all these angles, the changes in administrative policies, educational developments, princely state relations, changes in military, military structure, administration, all these things we have to see. Again, we will have to see important viceroys, and their policies, impact of those policies. Okay. Then we will have to see economic policies, of British and reaction of Indians, reaction of Indians to these policies, that also we have to see. Okay. So this point is very crucial for us. Okay? This point is very crucial for us. All these angles will be asked. And of course, when we study the past year question papers, we already get the idea. Yes, these are the hot topics on which the UPSC asks the questions. It will continue to ask the questions, okay? And it will always focus upon, okay, the different angles and analysis of these very crucial topics. Okay. Then we can see, after this we will have rise of nationalism, okay, in India, role of social and religious reforms, okay, very hot topic, favorite hot topic of UPSC. Okay. So again, these socio-religious reforms, we have to see background, impact of British rule, okay. We have to see the background, we have to see the impact of the British rule, okay. Then we have to see impact of these reforms, okay. That we have to see how the political climate was shaped, how these reforms ultimately brought the political changes in India, not from the side of British. Whatever British did, they brought their own changes, but how basically the very Indian national movement was going to take a shape, okay? It was going to be a reality as a result of this role of social and religious reforms, okay, that we have to see. Because one of the very crucial consequences of these social religious reforms was the formation of Indian National Congress, the very formation of Indian National Congress, okay? And it was because of this Indian National Congress that Indian national movement was going to take a place, was going to take a shape, right? It was going to be a reality. And this Indian national movement was led by those nationalist leaders who were, or a majority of whom were earlier the socio-religious leaders also, and later on they became the political leaders, right? So these angles also we have to see, that how the 1857 revolt ultimately changed the very context of India, how it brought the nationalism in India, how the social religious reforms which were already there parallel to the changes which were taking place, how these reforms themselves brought, okay, the very political changes in India, the rise of nationalism in India, the formation of INC, the ideology of the INC or Indian National Congress, ideology of the early nationalist leaders. Everything is associated with these reforms. So that becomes a very crucial topic. Okay. Now next, after that we have to see one more thing that we can see, the very economic critic of British rule by nationalist leaders, okay, which includes your drain of wealth, okay, drain of wealth theory. So that also basically becomes a part as far as the early response of Indians to the British rule after 1857 is concerned. Okay? or the early nationalist leaders and their strategies. This point is very, very crucial. Okay, because connected with all these aspects, the next aspects we will be able to see. Okay, now we will be able to see the next aspects. Now, with the formation of the Congress, the Indian national movement emerged. Then we have to see factors responsible. The Congress formation. Factors responsible for the formation of Congress. Okay. We have to discuss safety valve theory. And how it has been negated. Okay. How it has been discarded. Then we have to discuss reality of formation of Congress. Okay, this is also crucial. Then we have moderate phase. (1885 to 1905). Okay. So moderates, we have to see what was their ideology, objective, okay, methods and agenda, success or contribution, failures or limitation. Okay. This will be asked by the UPSC, and this has been asked by UPSC year after year as far as the formation of the Congress and a first phase of the Indian national movement is concerned. Okay. This is the first phase of Indian national movement. Second phase we have extremist phase. From 1905 1920. Okay. From 1905 to 1920. So first, who are extremists? That we have to know. Ideology and objective. Okay. Agenda and methods. Then success or contribution. Then we have failure or limitation. Okay. Here we have to see the role of cultural nationalism and revivalism. Okay. In this phase we have to see the role of cultural nationalism and revivalism. That how exactly this extremist phase, if they are called as extremist or so-called radicals, right? Why they are called so? What was the ideology which was shaping their actions? Right? So what was that cultural nationalism which turned into cultural revivalism, right? Based upon a particular religion, right? Based upon particular religion, culture, and civilization. Okay, and what were the consequences? Okay, and what were the consequences as far as this so-called cultural nationalism or revivalism was concerned? Okay, that also we have to see. And we also have to see the first two national movements, Swadeshi movement and then Home Rule League movement. Okay, Swadeshi movement and a Home Rule League movement. Okay, so these two movements which were fought as far as this extremist phase was concerned. Okay, so that is what we have to see. So here also we have to see background or causes, features and phases. Differences in actions or executions. Success and limitation. Contribution. The focus areas will be the very first ever national movement which was fought under the banner of Congress. It was a Swadeshi movement, known as an anti-partition movement or a so-called Vangabanga movement, Vande Mataram movement. There are so many names which we have, and it was fought under both the moderate and extremist sections. So obviously we have to see the phases and features. Okay? That when it was fought under moderates, what were the phases and what were the features? What was the agenda? What was the action plan? When it was fought under extremist, what were the phases? What were the features? What was the agenda? What was the action plan? Then overall, what were the causes and background that these movements ultimately started? That also we have to see, because unless and until we see that, we will not be able to decipher the very movements which took place. So all this we have to see. Then obviously we have to see the success or limitation as far as these movements were concerned. And finally, what was the contribution as far as the movement was concerned? That also we have to see. Finally, what was the contribution this movement was concerned? That also we have to see. So from all these angles, and as I told you, multidimensional, as always I am mentioning, both these movements we have to mention. And once we mention these movements from both these movements from the perspective as broad as the one I have mentioned, then definitely a clear picture will emerge and begin to emerge at how our national movement was taking place, how our national movement was shaping, how our national movement was progressing under the banner of Indian National Congress. And we will also be able to decipher how Indian National Congress was emerging as a all India organization, how Indian National Congress was emerging as a sole body or an institution which was representing the people of India as a whole. So all these things will be clear when we study all these phases. Okay? But as I have mentioned, there were some consequences in terms of cultural nationalism or revivalism, which was based upon particular religion, culture, and civilization. So you will see, because of focus on one religion, one single homogeneous culture, one single civilization, other sections of Indian society representing the diversity of India in terms of religion, in terms of culture, in terms of language, in terms of traditions, customs, civilization, they were excluded. And that's why the consequences included Okay? Rise of communalism. Okay? Divide and rule policy by British. Okay? Birth of a Muslim League. Birth of a Muslim League. We will see the birth of a Muslim League also. That point we have to keep in mind. And once this birth of a Muslim League took place, how British government, for their own political benefits, how it started to use this divide and rule policy, or separating or bringing a communal or religious divide between the two most important communities or a religious community of India, that is Hindus and Muslims, for their own ends and objective. That becomes a matter of importance for us, because that was going to shape the future national movement with its own consequences. So this is what we have to see. So now we will see, because of this policy of cultural revivalism, as a part of constitutional developments which had started in a British India after 1857 revolt, the policy of communalism through separate electorate was introduced. Okay, and this policy was introduced through Morley Minter reforms. This policy was introduced through Morley Minter reforms. Okay, and these reforms were going to have its own negative consequences as far as the Indian national movement was concerned. Because now the counterpart of the Congress had been created, that is Muslim League, and Congress and Muslim League, they were going to engage into never-ending conflicts, despite having a kind of union, despite having a kind of unity for a small period of time. But overall, you will see from now on, gradually both of these organizations were going to part their ways because of their differing ideologies. Congress was a secular organization, it was not a Hindu organization, but the British were trying to portray Congress as a Hindu organization, and Muslim League had overtly become a Muslim organization, and that was going to create consequences. But these consequences, which ultimately led to the emergence of Pakistan, still you will see every effort was made by Congress and all the Congress leaders to avoid these consequences. And the most significant phase you will see now started with the arrival of one of the greatest leaders the humankind has ever seen. Not only India, the humankind as a whole has ever seen in its whole history. That is the Mahatma Gandhi. And this phase which was going to emerge now was a Gandhian era. In 1920 to 1947. Next 27 years, they were going to be shaped by the Mahatma Gandhi's leadership, and how he basically actually and truly made the national movement as a inclusive movement, all-encompassing movement. It was a Gandhiji who was able to involve all sections of Indian society. Into fight with British. This fight was based on truth, non-violence, satyagraha, which was going to have non-cooperation, and civil disobedience as new techniques. Okay? All these new techniques were coming up. Gandhiji's strategy, Gandhiji's ideology, Gandhiji's plan of action, right? That to a mass action, was based upon the principles of truth and non-violence. It was based upon satyagraha, which included non-cooperation, which included civil disobedience. That is what we have to study, and that's why you will see we have non-cooperation movement. (1920-21). So, and this is called as a Khilafat non-cooperation. Okay. So called Hindu-Muslim unity. Okay. So we have to see the background. We have to see the features. We have to see the ideology and agenda. We have to see the consequences. We have to see the consequences also. Then we have Swaraj Party and its contribution. Okay, 1922 to 1926. Again, we have to see background, ideology and agenda, success and failure. Okay. Then we have civil disobedience movement. We have civil disobedience movement 1930 to 1934. Again, same background. Okay. Features, ideology and agenda, objective, failure, success, etc. Okay. Then the last Gandhian movement was a Quit India movement. Last Gandhian movement was a Quit India movement, 1942 to 46. And again, all the same things will be applicable to Quit India movement also. Okay? So for all national movements which started with the advent of Indian National Congress, be it a Swadeshi, be it a Home Rule League movement, be it a Khilafat non-cooperation movement, be it is a civil disobedience movement, be it a Quit India movement, we have the common things: background, ideology and agenda, objective, features, success, failure, and then the contribution or significance. Okay? So all these common points we have to keep in mind. And when we study this movement, we should study or we should follow the comparative approach. When we follow the comparative approach, so obviously we will be able to understand the events sequentially also, but at the same time with their respective differences from each other, and then that will shape our mind in a very holistic way. So this is a very crucial point. Okay. Then, so when this national movement was taking place as a part of banner of the Congress or agenda of the Congress, there were other strands or there were other features also as far as the national movement was concerned. Because national movement was fought by all sections of the society. So there were different sections even outside the Congress who were doing their bit for a formation of Indian nationalism and for achievement of Indian independence. And these sections ultimately were brought by the Gandhiji into Indian national movement. So we have peasants, the peasant movement. Okay. Again, 1857, 1947 are very important. Okay. Again, we have to see causes, okay, features, objectives, success and failures, and then major events like Indigo Revolt, okay, Pabna Rebellion, then we have our own Champaran Satyagraha, okay, Kheda Satyagraha, Kisan Sabhas in UP, Baradoli Satyagraha, okay, All India Kisan Sabha, and Kisan Manifesto, and finally we have Tebhaga movement. Telangana movement, okay. So these are the highlights as far as the peasant movements are concerned that we have to see. So that should be our approach. Okay. After that we have tribals. After that we have tribals. So tribals also have their own role in the same manner. Okay, again we have to see tribal movement, what were the causes, ideology, okay, features, success and failures. Okay, this we have to see. And tribal movement we can focus only on two: Santhal rebellion Birsa Munda revolt. Okay. Santhal rebellion and Birsa Munda revolt. These are the two main tribal movements that we have to focus upon. There are others also, but not necessary to go into all sundry tribal revolts. The causes, features, all the things are more important. Right? If any particular tribal movement might be in a news, right? If in a news as a part of current affairs, then only we should study. Okay? If any particular tribal revolt is in the news as a part of current affairs, only then we have to study. Otherwise there is no need as far as the study of this tribal movement is concerned. Okay. Then we have revolutionary movement. Okay. 1899 or you can say 1897 to 1932. So there are two phases. First phase 1897 to 1915. Second phase 1924 to 1932. Okay? So we have to see causes for rise, ideology and objective, differences in phases, features, okay? Contribution, limitation. So these aspects will remain same for all these movements, okay? Even for national movement and different sub aspects of the national movement, the features are same, okay? So this will also become very, very important and a crucial aspect as far as this 1857 to 1947 era is concerned. Then one more we have labor and trade union movement. Labor or trade union movement also we have, okay? 1880 to 1930, 35 we can say, okay? Again you have to see causes, features, influence of international event. Okay? In case of labor movement, the international factors like the rise of socialism, the rise of communism, the Bolshevik revolution in Russia, okay? These factors were going to influence the very labor movement and the trade union movement as far as the India was concerned, okay? So this point is very crucial to us, so that we have to keep in mind, okay? Then and again we have to see and focus the contribution to national movement. Okay? We also have to see the contribution to the national movement also. Okay? And this labor and trade union movement, they are also called as a left movements, the rise of left within the Congress, the rise of left outside the Congress. Okay? So these movements are also called as a left movement. So that also we have to see and that also we have to focus upon. UPSC will definitely ask the question to you, and nowadays the UPSC's focus is turning towards these all untouched areas. Okay? Because UPSC has asked many questions over the years as far as the main areas of the national movement, like moderate section of the Congress, extremist section, Gandhian movements and so on. But these are the new areas on which the UPSC is asking the question. That's why it is very, very important to us. So please keep in mind. And last phase and a focus that we have to go through as far as this 1857 to 1947 era is concerned is about constitutional development, so again you will see constitutional development, so we have Government of India Act, (1858), Indian Council Act, 1892, 1861, Indian Council Act 1861, then we have Indian Council Act, 1892, Indian Council Act 1909 Indian Council Act, Government of India Act 1919. Right? We have Government of India Act, and then Government of India Act 1935. Okay, so these acts and developments are very important, and especially these three are very crucial. These three are very crucial. Okay, the features, background, features, okay, consequences will be important to us. Okay, the background of these developments, the features or provisions of these developments or acts, and the consequences as far as these constitutional developments were concerned, and how ultimately it led India towards partition. How British played with the different communities of India, how they divided India on religious, caste, regional, linguistic lines, the commoners and princely states, and so on. So all this will be very clear to us, and this is very important both for a pre and mains perspective. So that has to be our agenda. And then last phase that we have to focus, 1940-1947 phase. Okay. So we have August Offer, 1940, Individual Satyagraha, 1941, Cripps Mission, 1942, C. Rajagopalaji formula, 1944, Desai-Liaquat Pact, 1945, INA trials, 1945-46, Range Mutiny, 1946. Okay. Formation of Constituent Assembly, 1946, and finally India Independence Act, 1947, called as a Mountbatten Plan. India Independence Act 1947, called as the Mountbatten Plan. So these are the last aspects as far as the Indian national movement is concerned. So you can easily see that how within these 90 years so many things have been covered. The things which may not have been covered by the other parts of the Indian history, these maximum things at a minute level, but having their own significance and having their own importance, they have shaped the last 90 years of Indian history. But all of this was a logical sequence and consequence of the earlier events or preceding events which led to these subsequent events and very shaped the national movement and changed the fortune of India. Ultimately we were able to get the independence in 1947, right? But that independence came at a cost. We had to pay the cost, and that cost was a partition of India on religious lines and the creation of a new nation on the basis of a religion, that is Pakistan. Okay? But still that doesn't take away from us the contributions which were made by all the Indians, the whole generation which was there during this first half of the 20th century, okay? And which was led by the great nationalist leaders of the Congress and even non-Congress parties. Okay? We also cannot forget the contributions of the revolutionaries who might have taken the weapons in their hand to liberate their own motherland, be it Subhash Chandra Bose or be it Bhagat Singh. Their paths were different, but the objectives were same. So all of them are like a great heroes for us, because whatever we are enjoying today, our current generation, the kind of independence, okay, the most magnificent constitution which any country might dream of in the world. That constitution we are enjoying. We are going to complete the 75 years of our independence in 2022. Okay? And all of us are going to attempt or take the examination in 2022. So obviously we can cherish and we can celebrate these values of our national movement, okay? The contributions of our heroes, the adults, the forefathers, okay? And we can only salute them. And the most important salutation will be that by mastering the Indian history as a whole and by mastering the modern history and especially the Indian national movement, we can crack the UPSC, we can become an IAS officer, and we can participate our own responsibility and we can contribute our own bit for the nation building purposes. We can make this India a great nation. It was a great nation, we can make it again, okay, in a modern way, and we can be a world leader. On this note, I would like to take your leave. I hope you enjoyed all the sessions, and these sessions are enjoyable also, and these sessions are extremely crucial also. So I am basically I have discussed all kinds of details and a blueprint, you can say, about cracking the history in UPSC both for pre and mains is concerned. I have covered all the topics: ancient, medieval, art and culture, modern India, world history, post-independence India, and I am sure that it will be very, very helpful to you. So on this note, I am ending the session. I will take your leave. Thank you very much. Have a good day and be safe, be responsible. Thanks a lot.